Nigga! What's up? It's your boy Super Mario 1990 coming at y'all with a review of Mafia Definitive Edition. Now, this game is a complete remake of the Mafia game that came out back in 2002. It's a remake from the ground up, and it was a real treat for me because I started with Mafia 2. That was the first game that I played, and I remember at that time being like, wait a minute, when did Mafia 1 ever come out? And after I beat Mafia 2 on YouTube, I checked out Mafia 1 just to see what it was about and how that story went. And I actually, I didn't see like a real like playthrough, but I saw like a cutscene movie. So I saw like all of the cutscenes in movie form. So that's how I've actually watched the game, and I've watched it twice. So I kind of knew like the story and plot heading into it, but at that time it was when Mafia 2 was first released. So like about like 2010, like about 2011 is when I saw that. So a lot of things kind of escaped my memory. I remember how the game started and how it ended, but a lot of things in between got like a little blurry. So it was still pretty much a brand new experience for me. And so it was good because I actually never played Mafia 1, the original version, even to this day. So it was great to get my hands on this one. And so getting into it, the graphics were really good. They were almost on par with Mafia 3, but I felt like it was just like a little off because they did say that they were going to pull a lot of assets and mechanics from Mafia 3, because Mafia 3, out of the whole series, Mafia 3 was the only game that came out on this generation of systems. So that was pretty smart. I mean, even when they did Mafia 2, they pretty much just upscaled the PS3 version and made it just look a little smoother here and there. Kind of roughed out some edges, but they didn't make like a deep improvement like with this game being a remake from the ground up. So this game was like meant to kind of mimic more so Mafia 3, because Mafia 3's actually been on these platforms. But I feel like it was a little scaled back. Not like completely noticeable, but it's just like if you look hard enough. But then again, too, I am playing on a base PS4, and Mafia 3, when that came out, I think PS4 Pro was not quite out yet, almost out, but not quite out yet. So that was made for the PS4, Mafia 3. So maybe if I had a Pro or like some improved specs, I'm pretty sure it would look better, but I don't know how much better. But it just felt like something was like just a little, something was just like a little off, like just a little scaled back a little bit. But it still looked like a really good game. Just not one of the most beautiful games you've ever played, especially like now in 2020. Like I feel like about 2017, 2018, 2018, I think, is when games like really started looking good. When the PS4 Pro was out and people started like trying to utilize HDR more. Mafia Definitive Edition doesn't look like it's up there with one of those games, but then when you think about it, it is an old-fashioned game, and it does come from like what, the 20s, the 30s, a little bit into the 40s. So you want the game to be authentic to the time period as well. You don't want like neon lights and all this like, you know, crazy kind of futuristic kind of stuff, because now it's taken away from the feel of what the game should be. And so as far as that with the remake, the graphics, it's good. It's good. I don't think anything above good, but I mean, it's really improved from how the original looked back in 2002 for the PS2 and Xbox. But along with that too, the story, from what I've heard, they've expanded a little bit. Some characters got like more of an arc, like just a little more development time. But pretty much outside of that, everything is the same. The story ends the same way. The story runs through the same way. They just kind of add things here and there. And it makes you wonder if maybe they were like things that were already originally in the game, but back at that time, maybe they had to, you know, put it on the cutting room floor because they just didn't have enough time for development, or, you know, whatever the case may be, or maybe like artistic differences, like, oh yeah, we could just leave that out. But whatever the case is, they expanded on a few things, but you're still getting pretty much the same experience. They didn't like completely change anything. They just kind of just added a few things here and there. And I felt like, from what I remember too, the story always was pretty good. It was always good. The plot, the characters, and it stayed good playing this remake. Everything was good. Like if you're a big fan of like mob movies, like I am, like just like, you know, the Godfather series, or Goodfellas, Donnie Brasco, like movies like that. This was really good. It really took on that tone of like the real mob life, just living a life, looking over your shoulder constantly, the glam and the glitz of it, the paranoia, the backstabbers, the snakes, and coming for that number one spot, always looking around for enemies. Like it had all those true feels, and it just felt really authentic to basically the crime life and the time period, and everything went smoothly as far as plot goes. And even with just like a lack of open world, like this game is not open world actually. I feel like Mafia 2 kind of was. Mafia 3 was a little bit. Not on the level of like Saints Row or Grand Theft Auto or anything. Like you didn't really have like too many activities. It was pretty much like, oh, buy your character this, some new clothes, or go to the chop shop, get your car done a little bit. But it wasn't like deep like Saints Row 2 or Grand Theft Auto 5, or even back to like San Andreas. It wasn't like that deep as far as exploration and activities and all that such. So with this one, it's really just more linear. And Lost Heaven is a beautiful city to explore, or it would be if they had open world areas, but they just didn't go that route. There is like a free ride mode that you can do, and I heard like if you do that mode, there are kind of like activities here and there, like driving activities, race to this part of town without crashing, things like that. But it still doesn't offer like any like open world value. So it's more linear. But the good thing about it is if you're playing for, I'd say like the story and the plot like I am, and the characters and everything, it does go really smoothly because not a lot gets in the way. You're really just experiencing just the story and the plot of it. Not much getting in the way of it. So it's like, okay, it keeps you down the road of completing the game and not disrupting the pace and the flow. So that was really good. Now, getting into the gameplay, there were some parts that were a hit and there were some parts that were kind of a miss. For one, I'll start with the fighting. Fighting in this game, the melee combat, really bare bones. Now, I do remember them saying that Tommy Angelo, they wanted to make like a more realistic, basically give it a realistic approach, because Tommy Angelo, he was the guy that was the cab driver. That's how he started. He was just a cabbie, and then the mafia pretty much came to him. They demanded a ride, and so after that, he was looking for protection because he pissed some people off, helping those guys out, and then he just kind of built his way into the mob family. So he wasn't built for this. He just adjusted to it. Whereas Vito, he was kind of like a knucklehead all his life, pretty much, because they grew up in poverty. He was trying to do anything he can to, just scrounge up some money. He was a hustler. And so he ended up going to jail. And then instead of going to jail for, the whole duration of his sentence, he actually served in the army instead. So he was doing that, and so he was trained to survive, trained to kill, and so now he goes back stateside. I just kind of like got those skills and like, okay, well, what can I do? And then he ends up being in the mob life. And then Lincoln Clay, I mean, dude was just straight up buff, just built for whatever, just built for war. Went to Nam, came back, had his whole family killed in front of him, his people, his friends, and like he's like, okay, let me avenge their deaths with my skills. So these two, like Vito and Lincoln, they were built for the life, whereas Tommy Angelo's just kind of adjusting to it. So with that, you got to make realistic adjustments to how he plays, which I understand, but it just left the melee fighting bare bones because he's not this big brawl fighter. He's just like kind of scrappy. He's a scrappy brawler at best. So his finishing moves are weak. Just his moves in general are just weak. And I think in this game, I think the only two melee weapons are a baseball bat and a knife. And I forgot to use a knife. I don't even know how using a knife goes. But it's like those are like the only ones outside of his fists. Now the good thing is there's only like 2 instances where you are required to fight. And then that's about it. Everything else is optional. And I didn't even fight outside of those 2 times where the game forced me to fight with him. Because when you play Mafia 2, there's quite a few times where Vito has to fight, and I felt like that was pretty good, like the fighting in there. It wasn't like the best of anything, but Mafia 3, when it came to fighting, man, Mafia 3, because Lincoln Clay is so skilled and has all those cool finishing moves and just brutal visceral combat skills, that made him the superior fighter. And so I was kind of hoping for that when they said they were going to borrow mechanics from Mafia 3. I was hoping for that in this game, but we didn't get that. So he's more of just this, just scrappy brawler that can just barely, scrape up in a fight. So that was really weak, but the shooting was pretty fun. Now, it wasn't as smooth as Mafia 3. Like I said, he's not as skilled. Like with Lincoln Clay, I felt like Lincoln Clay was just so fast and quick. Like a guy can have a shotgun and I can charge that guy and just use a brutal finishing move just with the melee. Like it was really, really fun. With Tommy Angelo, you can't do that. He's not fast. He'll jog to someone and get shot down really quickly. So you got to watch your approach in this game. And so that felt a little realistic. And the shooting felt pretty good. It didn't feel like Mafia 2 quite. Well, it did kind of feel like more like Mafia 2, kind of. It definitely did not feel like well, as far as skills are concerned, it didn't feel like playing Mafia 3. Like it is Mafia 3's mechanics, but um, I would say when you're using a Tommy gun, it's like really, really sloppy. It sprays everywhere, and it feels like Tommy just doesn't have any control over it, which is probably intentional because he's a cabbie. He's got to adjust to shooting people, and so it took me about halfway through the game to get used to it to start shooting like a pro. But I think that's what added to the realism and the immersion of it. And shooting was actually still fun. It was way funner than melee combat. So when I got used to it, I was kind of like running around, shooting on the go, and then trying to duck into cover. Because I mean, that's mostly what you do in the Mafia games when you're in the shootouts. It's not like a run in guns blazing. You got to kind of be strategic, know where to go, time up, like when to come out of cover and start shooting, know when to go back in, reload. It's really, I think, really tactical. So this game really hit into that need for that. Like Mafia 3, I do feel like I could just run around loose and kind of do whatever. And Lincoln Clay was just so skilled at that, being this army guy who came, from Vietnam. But with Tommy Angelo, it's kind of like this guy's a cab driver, so you got to be a little more careful. He's not about that life all like that. So that really did feel real, and the shooting was actually pretty fun. And the driving in this game, the driving was pretty good. I would say the driving was on par with Mafia 3. I think the only thing that really set it apart were the cars that you drive. They're more old fashioned because this game is set like in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, right? And so, or 20s and 30s when you play. And then it's like more the 60s and 70s with Mafia 3. So you get like more improved cars. But they did, I think, drive the same way. Everything was authentic to, I feel like anyway, how the cars were supposed to drive. I mean, I wasn't around back then, but it handled smooth enough. It was really like when you were like making hard turns after going at a fast speed, that's when you can kind of like lose control and kind of drift. But it wasn't to the point where it was like Mafia 2 where you're just swerving out of control over any little thing you do. Even if you just want to make a right turn at 20 miles per hour, it was kind of like going out of control. You don't get that in Mafia 1. You didn't get that in Mafia 3. It was pretty much on par, just as smooth, nothing too crazy. And so, yeah, driving up and down the city was really fun, and having missions where you got to outrun the cops, that was really, really fun. And they played this nice, cool music, this nice, cool chase music, and everything just felt really good. It wasn't like the best car chase scenes you'll ever see in a game, but in this game, it just kind of freshened things up a little bit and really just kind of made you feel it. So overall, with all that being said, I give this game a 9 out of 10, and most of that goes into the fact that the game, as a story and as the plot and the characters, everything was really nailed because it felt like I was playing through a mob movie, and that's how Mafia 2 felt for me too. And so everything went really, really good with that, and it's really just the gameplay. Like the gameplay wasn't great. As far as shooting goes, it was really good. The driving, pretty good. I mean, you've played way better games than this, but the fighting, like I said, the melee, weak, very, very, very weak. The good thing is you're not required to fight. So that was really good. I'm glad they did that. You know, you just kind of shoot your way out. There are a couple of stealth missions here there. Not hard at all. I'm not a stealth guy. It's not hard at all. It just adds a nice variety to the game, though. It kind of like breaks up, the action here and there. And for those missions, it really made sense. And it just really added a layer of immersion to the missions, too, I would say. It just added more variety to just running around, shooting up, bang, 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 or just, driving around, dodging cops and trying to get away from enemies and things like that. So that just added just another layer to the game to keep it fresh. But overall, yeah, like I say, like 9 out of 10. Great story, like the music. Everything just fit with the tone and the vibe of the game, of the time, of the period. And yeah, y'all, if you guys have played this game, let me know what you think of it, or if you plan on playing it or thinking about playing it. What are you looking forward to? But this your boy Super Mario 1990. I'm out. Peace in.